So welcome everybody to the April edition of Jobs to be Done Untangled, where Jim, myself, and our monthly special guest come together and we facilitate a discussion around what you're doing with jobs to be done at the workplace, if you have any questions we can answer, and just generally share ideas and experiences around working with jobs to be done. So as you can tell, this is a pretty relaxed and flexible conversation. We'll give Jim and Wolfram some time to talk about Wolfram's experiences and share some of his passions about jobs to be done. And then we'll move into a Q&A session for the second half of the meeting today. And we'll collect questions for the Q&A in the chat. So if you post them there, I'll copy and paste them into the mural board that's being shared on the screen. We do this as a meeting with everybody has access to their microphone and camera so that you can also come on stage and ask your question, ask follow-up questions, participate in the discussion. So we really encourage everybody to speak your mind, share what you want. And then keep an eye on the chat as well, because the past couple of months that's been really active and there's been some valuable conversation there as well. We will send a follow-up email after this with resources to the recording, a downloadable PDF of the mural with all of the questions and the chat, as well as any resources or books or anything that come up in conversation. I'll link to that in the follow-up email. So as I mentioned, I'm Elaine Mathias, one of your co-hosts today. I'm also here with Jim Callback. Hi, Jim.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jim, author of the Jobs to be Done playbook and co-founder with Elaine of the Jobs to be Done toolkit. Great to see everybody. Great to see everybody back here. And yeah, so here's today. We got Wolfram Nagel here. Herr Nagel, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Jim. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, and we'll talk to him about some of the exciting things he's been doing with jobs to be done. But I think we got a couple announcements, right, Elaine? We'd just like to get this housekeeping done.
That's correct. So just really quickly, if you're not familiar with our Jobs to be Done Essentials course, we have a really great, it's about 4.5 hours of video that just sort of covers everything that you need to know about getting started with jobs to be done and facilitating a jobs to be done project in your workplace. We also offer a deep dive course on job maps called Job Maps from Beginning to End. It's 1 week, 3 days over lunch for about 2 hours. And we really dive into how to create a job map, and we create a lot of time in that course for discussion as well. So it's very hands-on, very practical. And then as always, we like to remind everybody of the next Jobs to be Done Untangled, which is the last Tuesday in May, May 31st, same time, same place, register on Zoom, and we'll see you there.
Yeah, we have this linked here, jtbd.tk/untangled May, and we'll send that around. If you follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter, or follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter, that'll be coming around just before that. So as Elaine mentioned, please ask your questions in Zoom, in the chat. We do want this to be a community call. I think we build this as a webinar/community call. So you can put your webcams on, and then when you ask questions, we're going to have you unmute. So please stay muted now. But when we have a discussion, it's great if you can jump in and ask your questions live, but otherwise stay unmuted until you're talking. And I'm going to move right along. I already introduced him, Wolfram Nagel. I think we met, when did we first meet, Wolfram? I think it was 6 years ago, or maybe even 8 years ago in Germany. I lived in Germany for a long time, and I was involved with the Information Architecture Conference. I think we met in Berlin, is that right?
Yeah, I guess it was one of the IA conferences more than 6 years ago, I guess.
Probably.
Longer. 7, 8, yeah, around that. I
so
joined
you're
one of the workshops, and yeah, that was the first time we met, I guess.
Okay. And you're a UX designer at TeamViewer, and you also wrote a book called, what's the multi-screen design? Is that the name of your book?
It's multi-screen UX design. I wrote that book I published it 6 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
And it talks about using multiple screens and having task flows move across screens and things like that, right?
Yeah, it started when I was working on my diploma thesis already 15 years ago, and then was the time when everyone was using different devices. Then it was actually before the iPhone came out, and then this was a topic, and then I got into that and wrote the book.
Yeah, I guess a lot has changed since you wrote the book, that if you were to update it, you'd probably have a lot to talk about now, huh?
Yeah, a lot has changed. So you do not need to tell people anymore that users are using different devices. So this was not normal back then, but
That's
now
correct.
like,
Yeah. I remember if you go back like 20 years ago, the question was, what resolution should we design for? 800 by 600 or 1024 by 1080? That was the question. And then you had to say that. I remember saying to stakeholders back then, people might have different size screens. Like, and now it's just, of course, everything's responsive. Of course, everything is mobile. And so the message has changed a lot over time, right?
Yeah. Right.
So how did you get into Jobs to be Done? Why, with that background and all the great work you did there, your book, check out his book. How did you get into Jobs to be Done?
So I guess it was through these topics for multi-screen, atomic design, all that stuff, different devices, UI. Then I was a lot involved in content management, enterprise content management, content design, content strategy, all that stuff. And then I came across Jobs to be Done, I guess 8-9 years ago, the first time, and it sounded interesting, and I got into it and read books and articles and followed conversations. And yeah, since then I practiced it and failed somehow, learned a lot also in these sessions here today and in workshops. So yeah, since around 8-9 years, I would say, I'm into the topic.
Yeah, and we appreciate all the thought and questions that you bring to Jobs to be Done Untangled, because and the one reason why I wanted to have you on the show, because I think you're a practitioner out in the field, really trying to apply these things and coming across. And I know you've asked me many times on very specific, very, very practical questions about Jobs to be Done. So I just really appreciate the application of Jobs to be Done that you've shown in your work. And I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the ways that you're using Jobs to be Done in your work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's your approach? So you have a UX team there. What are the types of things you're doing and why?
So in my previous company, so I'm at TeamViewer since more than 5 years now. And in my previous company, I started with that topic, and already then I started to like evangelize everyone around Jobs to be Done. Everyone who did not run away too fast enough got my introduction. And over the years at TeamViewer, I like introduced the Jobs to be Done thinking, I call, and the mindset to colleagues, to my team, to other stakeholders. And around that, we created then later we created a framework and mindset introduction that gets everyone who starts at TeamViewer since 2 years now gets that introduction, this mindset introduction when they are onboarding. And around that, later we created a framework around it to explain it, to have some examples, and to so that it is not needed every time to explain it from scratch again. So that was my challenge at the beginning. I always needed to explain everything. And now I'm introducing everyone within 1 hour, like a quick introduction. And then we are at like not eye level, but we can discuss with some basic information, and it makes it easier for me and my team to apply the methodology.
And I think you have some of that you can share. I think one question that we get, Elaine and I get a lot, is how do I introduce Jobs to be Done to my company? When every time we do that workshop that Elaine mentioned before, I have people put their top 3 questions about Jobs to be Done, and then I cluster them. And one of the clusters that almost always comes up as a group from students in the course is, how do I bring this into my organization? How do I convince other people? And it sounds like you've done a little bit of that. And do you have that to share right now?
Yeah. So I can share. I prepared some stuff. So how I did it at the beginning, I just did it. So not scientifically correct, let's say. I just did it. And what I did 5 years ago, I would not do anymore today, but it just started, and I learned, and we applied it, and something worked, something not.
Yeah.
And now I guess we are like, we are not bad now how we are applying it. And everything we do is rather a pragmatic approach. So
Right.
it's not too much time, not enough time, not enough budget.
Right.
Research, limited resources, all that stuff, but it's fine. And I would say it works.
Yeah. And you know, that's how I got started. I tell people that as well too. They say, when should I do it? How do I get started? It's like, just start it. Just start one thing, because it's kind of, I guess it's Bayesian. Is that the right word? Where you want to become less incorrect over time, right? Isn't that how Bayesian, does anybody know? Is that right, Spencer?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. You want to become less incorrect, right? So don't think you're going to come out and boil the ocean and get it right at first. That you need to learn your way into jobs to be done. And that's really what I appreciate about your practical view of that. You've done that. That's how I got started as well too. And I made all of the mistakes, right? That's essentially what my book is. My book is all of the mistakes that I made that I don't want you guys to make as well too, because it took me all the running my head into a brick wall to figure it out the hard way. So maybe you can help some folks accelerate their thinking, Wolfram, if you want to share your screen.
Yeah, maybe I just go through some slides I prepared.
Yeah, sure.
In the end, so it turned out that we needed, at the beginning, it was very pragmatic how we did the, how can I move that away? Can I move? I know it works, okay. At the beginning, so we just applied it, and there was a lot of manual work at the beginning, and then I applied for some budget at my company to like create a tool that makes some stuff easier. And so it ended up with that what you see right now. I can show you later in the browser how it works, but I cannot show you the whole tool because it's some sensitive data there. That's why I have just screenshots here. Sorry about that. So here are usernames, so I cannot show it. So in the end, we introduced the user focus program from TeamViewer, where customers can apply to join us and to collaborate with us, to develop the product with us in conversations. We can do surveys and interviews and all that stuff. And this is how it looks. So this is the overview, how that's the database of the users. What we have, they provide a lot of information. Similar to what we defined for our persona. So they have the same traits. That's just the overview. Then I can pick them by applying filters. And I need an IT supporter with high IT skills who uses the product every day or not too often. And so all that stuff we can filter. And then, so this is like, we have a persona called Sam. And we have access to, this is an older number, it's more in the meantime, I have access to 200 or 250 SAMs who are similar to Sam, who have the same role, the same usage, the same IT skill, works with the same operating systems, all that stuff. And we can directly talk to them and pick them and do a meeting, an interview session with them to get some qualitative insights from them. And that's how such a persona, it's based on a proto persona template, how this looks like. So we have domain experience, IT skills here, all that stuff. Usage, problems, frustrations. I mean, you know how personas look like, and that's, but that information is also provided by our customers. They provide it, so it's like they gave consent that we can use it. And then we have so it's basically two sections, a user section and a survey section, and that's a survey section. And surveys, so I'm just going into the jobs to be done part. There's also other areas or survey templates. So that's maybe if you know the strategy and approach from Tony Alvig, minimize the time it takes to do this or that, when blah, blah, blah. So that's also what we apply. And we learned a lot, by the way. We rephrased and we did different survey types, and something worked not. So it ended up with this one. That's the status right now. So we asked.
So is this a static list then? Are you still adding?
No, I can show you later. It's not static. We can filter. So we do interviews or internal workshops. So just to extract, like you explain in your workshop, which by the way helped a lot to get this like practically done. So we extract all these needs from customers. We do a job map I can show later. And then we pick the needs we want to put into a survey. We do it. I talked to you a lot. If you remember, can I do this online? Do I need to do it face to face? I don't have the time to do face to face interviews with 100 customers. I would like to, but no resources for this. So we do an online survey and we ask these customers about the needs we extracted from qualitative research. Sounded interesting, but we don't know if it's just one customer who is pretty loud and it's not relevant for others, or so we just don't know. And then we put all these needs into a survey. We ask them, please answer by importance and satisfaction. The ones who knows the strategy and approach maybe know it already. If not, I just published an article where I also explain this, so maybe I can share the link later. Where it's explained. And then they rate it by importance and satisfaction. Then I get a score, like this is the rating, the score, and everything above 10 is an underserved need. Maybe we should look into this. What I can do in addition, I can use the filters here I mentioned before. So this is just some of them. There are more we can use. So I can filter by IT skill, by the role, and then maybe score, and the order of these needs changes, which we do not blindly follow, but this is an indicator. Maybe we should care about these needs here first before we look at these ones, because they seem to be more important, more underserved. And then we also have different views on that. This what I can show you in the tool directly. So this is like a job map. This diagram you also know from strategy maybe, so or from other approaches. And that's how these needs are spread across when everyone joins. And what I found out is that if you ask everyone, it ends up in the middle, which doesn't really help. But if I, for example, go for the rather skilled people, let's check. So this changes now, and also the order in the list. I cannot show the list to you because then you see all the sensitive data. So this is how it changes, and then I can look for clusters, or I can look for the ones who have a free version or who pay us, or the admins, for example. Maybe they have different needs or similar needs, and that's how we can find. So for that kind of users, these needs here at the bottom right, the underserved, are probably more interesting than the ones on the left. And then what we also added is a gap view, so which shows us this is a huge gap, is very important for the customer and not really satisfactory at the moment. So maybe look at these ones. So it's also in an order, so you can have it like a job map from beginning to end. And that's just how we try to find the needs. We don't know their importance. That's how we try to find. Let's have a look at the admins, because they complain a lot, or at these kind of people, and we want to make it good for these. And then let's look for A2, T, and Q. Maybe these are the needs we should care about. That's basically.
And you told me this is live, right? Like the survey data is coming in as we talk, right?
Yeah, it's a running survey. You can actually, this is a public survey also. You can like access it. Maybe I can show it. So
you're doing the outcome statement survey live, and you can actually see that in a dashboard that you can then filter by different types of customers that you have.
So you could now go onto this page, and this is the public surveys we have right now. Not only jobs to be done surveys, also other surveys. And when someone participates, it's actually also, so it's added here. So it's an online, it's running all the time.
So theoretically, the things in the lower right-hand corner should be your priorities, or they're your opportunities. What do you do with those now that you know that? Do you take that back to the product manager and the team and think about roadmap, things up on the roadmap, or things that you need to develop from scratch?
So it depends on in which state the project is. So is it already running? I guess last time or the time before, we were talking about an issue, or I had a question. Project already running. We need to deliver like next week. No time for big research. So, but in the meantime, we can do it anyway and can come up with new insights later and maybe adjust a bit.
Right.
So what we do with that is we use it to discuss in the team and with stakeholders. So we can bring in the insights. Now we have new insights. Look, these are the problems for the ones we care about. Maybe we should have a deeper look, and then we can, like I had these filters here, I can use the filters again and reach out to similar customers and talk with them about, do you have that issue? Can you tell me more about it? Why are you not satisfied? And why is it so important for you? And tell me more about it. So we can focus on these needs, and also maybe check if we already have features in the product that are just not communicated well, wrong label, whatever, and maybe the problem is already solved. So that's
correct. Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I think some folks want to see a one-to-one relationship between jobs to be done work and a current project or current effort that they have, and it's going to influence that one. I tend to see jobs to be done a lot more foundational. That once you set this up, and you have this amazing tool that you created, once you set this up, you might be getting insight that you use for the next strategic initiative, right? And it may not be immediately relevant, not because it's not important information, but because that project has already moved, or it's already quote unquote too late for this data to influence what you're doing now. But there's almost always going to be something in the future where you can bring in that thinking. And to think about jobs to be done work as foundational. That's what I like to think about it as. It's something that's foundational that you can then keep kind of coming back to over and over again. And the fact that you have this live is incredible to me, that this is being updated as we speak, and you can actually segment this, right? So that that it's pretty impressive. And when you showed me this, Wolfram, my mind just kind of exploded a little bit. That's why I wanted to have you on the show.
We have a couple questions in the chat.
Yeah, do we want to get over to some questions, Elaine?
Yeah, I just wanted to reference these because they're specific to what we're looking at now. But there are two questions about how often you're running the surveys and how many need statements are you surveying?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a pretty, very good question, because I also wanted to answer to what Jim said. So we are using this since 3 years now, and we are also using it while we are running a project. So when I'm overwhelmed, like I need to design that UI or that feature, and I always say, sorry, can you tell me why? What's the need? What's the job to be done? What's the user? Can you tell me more about it? And at the beginning, we started like doing this research to have at least some knowledge about what's really needed, what the problems are. And when the project is already running, we can come in later, or we can use it later. If it's too late, no problem. In the meantime, when we have projects, we have these surveys and these evaluations already, and then I can go back. I just had a project recently, and then I was able to say, oh, we had a survey around that. Let me have a look. I can look at the needs and look, so we can play around with the roles, with the license types, with the skills, what users told us, to find out what the needs are. And then we can have detailed discussions about what is this really needed? Is this a problem or not? What was the question? The other question? So we are, when we are applying it, right?
How many questions, how many statements, and when you're running it? Yeah.
So maybe I can show you another slide here. So this is a job map. That's actually a mural template we use. So we did a lot of, and the colors indicate that it's from an internal workshop, that it's from a customer, or some are also just, I created these need statements because after the conversation with the customer, I thought this can be a need.
Yeah.
So, and we put them onto a job map. This is like 200 needs for one job, which is too much. So we do the workshops, we do the qualitative interviews with customers, and then we extract all these needs, like Jim explains very well in his workshop. So that's what we did. Now we have too many, as you see, 200. Then I discuss with the team, with the product manager, product owner, or any other stakeholder. Let's pick. Can you please select some representative ones? What you think is so? I would like to run a survey with 200 need statements, but no one will join that survey or finish it. So we normally use 30 to 50 statements. Actually, also, I got that number from these conversations we had here. And then I asked these guys can you please select a representative need statement for, or some statements for each stage. And in the end, we have 30 or 40 altogether. So this is a structure of I cannot zoom in because of the sensitive data. So, but you can imagine how it looks like. And then we pick representative statements for each stage, do the survey. And when we found out that in this stage or here, all these statements got rated very high, we can dive deeper and care about all the other related statements. So that's the next step then. But we cannot do a survey with 200. So to answer the question, we collect them internally or with talking to customers, and then we select some. We pre-select some. And one important point, if maybe you think, oh, they do it in internal workshops. Yes, can be wrong. Also, a customer I talk to can be wrong. But what I do later with the survey, I put this need, or I provide this need to be evaluated or rated by 100 or 200 others. And if they tell me that my needs statement that I wrote is important, who cares if it was from me or from a customer? The other way around as well. So that's how we.
I see. So you're looking at the importance score as a way to validate that the need statement is even.
That's how we check if a need statement, no matter where it's coming from, is really relevant.
That's interesting. I like that. I've done projects where we actually did a separate research effort just to validate the need statements by going back out and saying, is this a need that you have? Is this a need that you have? It was a little bit more sophisticated than that. But I really like the idea or the thought that you're saying is that if they rate it as important, it doesn't matter where it comes from. It resonated with them because they said it was important, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I see a question about the scoring too, Elaine. I didn't know if you wanted to go there, but from what I'm seeing in the chat, can you talk about how you do the scores? Are you totaling it up and then averaging it, and then how are you calculating the actual score?
The score is calculated. Maybe I can show you the article. Is it here somewhere? So I also took that from another YouTube video. So the score is calculated. It's also taken from Strategy. So we follow their approach pretty much, but we do it more pragmatic. I joined a workshop with them some years ago. So the score is, so you calculate, so you ask 2 questions to customers. How important is this need for you? And how satisfied are you at the moment? And then they have like 5 answers from not important at all to very important, and the same for satisfaction. And there's a pretty easy formula behind that puts then, where do I have it? These, maybe you can show that one again. That puts the important, satisfaction, and that calculates the score. So we don't do it ourselves. We just follow that formula. And then I have the score, which is the highest score is the most bottom right. We can also sort it by importance. If we don't care about satisfaction and only about importance, can also happen. Or if you care only about satisfaction, and the gap is just the difference between importance and satisfaction. So we look at all these numbers: high score, high importance, low satisfaction, and then okay, maybe let's look at these ones on the bottom right. They seem to be interesting. So it's a formula behind we use.
16 is a super high score. I've never had a 16 myself. That's in the stratosphere.
Yeah. So it's like, it is the importance like 9, close to 10.
Right.
10
yeah. And then look at the satisfactions in the
satisfaction
toilet.
is pretty low.
That's amazing. Yeah. There you go. So you guys need to address that one. Right? I think you have a compelling case to look at that.
Yeah, but always. So we do not blindly follow the data. We just use it. And maybe we won't care about it, or we did it already, or we don't care. I don't know. Or we don't.
Right.
So yeah, but I mean, we should have a look at it. 16 is pretty high, right?
You think about it in some sense, it might even be marketing should target messaging around. I mean, it's not just product solutions that can be part of your strategy for addressing these, right?
Yeah, correct.
Great. Elaine, do you want to start in with some of those other questions then? Or?
Yeah, so most of the questions are still for Wolfram. There's one more from Anna. Do you validate needs per stage or independently?
Sorry, again?
Do you validate needs per stage or independently?
Per stage, you mean from the job map?
Anna, is that what you're referencing?
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. With ODI, you do it really per step, per stage in a job map, indeed. So I wonder if you keep the structure as well in survey.
So what we have in the survey, we have that if you see the gap list, this is the order, so we can order it from left to right somehow. It's not a job map, but it's A is rather at the beginning and the 1 is rather at the end. Mm-hmm. But we don't. So yeah, it depends. So in the last survey we picked representative needs from each stage, but it could also happen that we find out that so Jim, you also did that previously in your company. So you look at the job map, right, and you ask your team, where are we good? And then you end up, okay, stage 4 and 5, we are pretty bad. Yeah. However, so, and then it could happen that we only do a survey with the needs from stage 4 and 5. Can also happen because we don't care about these others. It's not that important at the moment, or everything is good, or we think it's good. Then we dive deeper only in one stage. Can also happen.
Yeah, we actually used the job map to help us interpret the outcome statement data, because we didn't get a 16. We didn't get these scores of things that popped out. But what we saw were clusters of opportunity. In our case, it was towards the end of the job map. So it helped us come up with a strategic hypothesis that we got to help people at the end of getting the job done. That's where we believe their biggest pain was, as opposed to the beginning. So it allowed us to zoom out even at a higher level and not be specific, like address this job point, but rather let's look more towards the end of the job map. And that was just kind of a strategic framing of things, not very specific, because the data wasn't giving us much otherwise. That's just the way our numbers didn't fall out really well.
Also, so we didn't do the job map every time. So at the beginning, we didn't do a job map. I came across it later. And at the beginning, we just had some random need statements, 50, I don't know. And then we picked 30 or 40 of them and did the survey. So they were not ordered yet. But now, so you can also like use your need statements, do a survey, and put them on a job map later on. Not sure what you think, Jim. I think this also would work. I would not say you need to do it like this or that.
Yeah, I mean, the big question is, do outcomes or need statements map to are they chronological? And sometimes they are, but sometimes they might not be as well too. I think there's generally, I see a loose correlation between outcome statements and the chronology that you have, kind of like you did on that other view. You had that the gap view. Mm-hmm. It's not saying these things happen strictly one after the other. This isn't a process. It's basically saying those things on the left happen before the things on the right. But I've not necessarily found a one-to-one correlation between outcome statements and job steps.
I think it's very different per job map. Sometimes you see a red line.
Agree, Anna. Yeah.
Yeah, and also, I mean, these are just, so these are all in stage 4. We try to order them. The ones at the top are eventually more at the beginning than the ones at the bottom, but this doesn't work. So it's just, it belongs to that stage. And actually, we are also struggling sometimes. We put stuff into stage 5, but it would also fit into stage 2.
Correct.
So, but who cares?
Right.
So I mean, I have the pragmatic approach. Who cares? Right. If it's a need statement, we should take care. We should evaluate, and if it's rated high, it doesn't matter if it's stage 2 or 5. Right. It's an issue for our customers, and maybe we should fix it, no matter where it's positioned in the map.
Who cares? I love it. I love your pragmatic attitude. I hope everybody's appreciating the practicality of Wolfram's approach here.
Yeah. Dawn, I'm curious about the comment that you left in the chat about how sometimes you combine importance with frequency at a lower weighting. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then we'll move on to today's question.
What do you mean with frequency?
Yeah, I think I typed that in. In our questions, we'll mostly use importance and satisfaction in the gap, but sometimes we have a wide range of things that some can be very frequent and some are infrequent just by nature. You know, like you only change your settings and as an administrator once a year or something, you know. And so we may look at things both ways. We also ask that frequency question. So it's a rating scale of how frequently do you do this?
Yeah.
And that's another measure of how important it is. It's a different dimension. I mean, there's a lot of correlation between them, but it's a modifier on importance. So we may do, you know, 2x importance and the frequency, combine them into one score and use that, you know, as kind of an overall modified importance rating.
Interesting.
I like that. Jim, you also have it in your book, right? As an example, the frequency example with the metrics. If I remember correctly, there's also something in the book.
I guess I got to read that. You guys probably know my book better than I do.
So yeah, so this is also, so this is actually one feature we could add to the tool to also check frequency. Yes,
right. Yeah,
which is important. Yeah, if it's important, but not so if it's a big issue like the emergency button, for example, not used that often. But if it's important, maybe we should still care about it. Yeah. But yes, very good, and I like that, and it's also important. Or if we have two statements, rated the same score, maybe do the more often used, care about that one.
27 responses. Yeah, we get 20 responses.
Yeah, you know, I think for me too, that also starts to inform the solution space as well too, right? Because you might get 3 outcomes in the lower right corner of your chart, and you say we're going to target those. Okay, you still have to come up with a solution. How are we going to address those? Is that a product feature? Is that an enablement thing? Is that a marketing thing, right? And then the way that you approach that solution, I think, can then be informed about it, right? Is this an emergency button that only gets used once every 10 years? Or is this something that they're doing every day? Okay, that's going to affect how I actually then design that solution, whatever that might be as well too. So I don't think it's irrelevant information, Dom, but the question is, when do you bring that in? I don't know. Curious if anybody else has any other frequency experience looking at frequency.
As you're talking about the solution space, maybe I can bring in another overwhelming diagram, that one.
Oh, put on your seatbelts. So look at this. It's a roller coaster
what I
ride
wanted to
over
say
here.
is, when we are done with that, we are still in the problem or needs research space. And then we sum up these need statements with a job story where and is allowed. In the need statement, it's not allowed because it doesn't make sense. And we come up with or we summarize everything with a job story. Maybe 4 or 5 job stories are the summary of the research, care about these ones. And then we put it. So this is the research area here. You do not need to understand that framework just from now. This is the research part. And when we are done here, we decide we have use the job stories phrase, and then we go into the solution space where we find solutions related or according to these defined job stories. And when we have a solution, then we decide and then we implement it. So that's actually the framework we created based on some other frameworks. You might recognize some, maybe the higher level one is better. You recognize some other frameworks here as well.
Design thinking, lean, agile loops.
Exactly.
And you kind of overlapped all those models on top. Is this what you actually show your team? Do you talk to your team about this, where you are in the process? This
is part of this introduction for the new joiners in the onboarding session. So I do all that into that. Yeah. I share the link. So the link is basically similar, or this article is basically similar to what I tell my new colleagues. Yeah. And in the end, they see this and we pull this out to discuss or I use it to explain we are here at the moment. So
Right.
I don't talk about a feature, I talk about a need. And when we are done with the need, then we can talk about ideas and all that stuff. And then it's the next step. So that's how I use it to, but I need that 1 hour introduction before to be able to use that one.
Right. That makes sense. And that's great. That's great that you do that. What's next, Elaine?
I want to shift to Jay's question because I think he had a really interesting one that's specific to his context. Do you want to, can we go back to the mural, Jim?
Oh yeah, I'm not sharing.
Shall I can stop. I can stop sharing, and then you can take over.
Okay. Yeah, and then we'll start highlighting some of the folks on the call. Thanks, Jay, for your question. Nice to see you.
2 questions in here. Dom's question we can come back to.
Okay.
I think especially about the clustering, there's more to that outside of what Wolfram was showing as well. But to everyone else, if you have questions, if you want, Wolfram and Jim to comment on some, somewhere sticky that you're at, post it in the chat and let us know, and then I'll add it to the queue here.
Do you want to read your question, Jay?
Yeah, great. Thanks. Thanks, Wolfram. That was terrific. And just the sophistication you've got, I think is kind of blowing people away, but this is really timely for me. I'm glad that we had some ODI on the screen to look at, because historically I haven't really practiced ODI, but Jim has inspired me in his book to have a broader toolkit. And this weekend I was actually taking a project that we didn't start on the ODI process, but through the qual interviews, I realized I had pretty much enough to create a decent job map, and I'm compiling dozens of desired outcome statements. I sat this weekend with Jim's book, Scott's book, Tony's book, all in front of me, figuring out how to do this. But a challenge for us, and I think the desired outcome statements really help develop clarity and a value proposition.
Yeah.
But, I'm probably not the only one to say, hey, doing a several hundred person quantitative survey, paying people to get through that survey is a barrier.
Yeah.
I feel like still the steps of the job map and desired outcomes, I have some ideas on where to go next, but I just want to get some other ideas. Maybe if you've had this issue, what are other things you can do at this stage to make progress in your work?
So I had the same challenge. Like I like the ODI approach. I also, as I mentioned, I joined the workshop with Strategy some years ago, and I like the approach. But I had the same barriers as you. So what do I do now? I cannot talk to 100 customers. So and we did a survey. The first layout was not too good, and so on, and it ended up in that tool. But at the beginning, we just put some statements to a survey, send it out. They were able to rate. Back then, it was possible from 0 to 10 or 1 to 10 to rate it. We found out that 5 is better than 10 options.
Mm-hmm.
And then we imported the data. I got help from a colleague into Excel, I guess. And then we created that chart. So from that survey. But it was not possible to apply filters then. So this was just a result from everyone. But it was the first step, and it was pretty helpful already. So it was some manual work. Took us, I don't know, 5 to 10 hours to get that chart. And that's what actually I also used to show to my internal stakeholders when I applied for the budget. Look, this survey took 10 hours to evaluate. If we have the tool, one early version of it, it takes us 1 hour, and I can also apply the filters.
Mm-hmm.
But this one survey without the option to separate and change filters was already done in Excel. It's possible.
But it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, Wolfram, that you're actually selecting. You're not doing all 150 outcome statements. That what you're surveying on is a subset of them. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And I think that's your point, Jay, is that they've kind of, and you're like clustering by theme, because you said you pick representative outcomes. So you're looking at themes, and you want to make sure each of the themes are represented in the 30 to 50 that you end up with. Is that right, Wolfram?
Okay, yeah. Then
Yeah.
then I would, so if you have a job map already and you have the stages, I would just talk to my product manager, to some other stakeholders, which we are limited to 40 statements, which one shall we use?
Right.
There's a risk that you ask the wrong ones and you exclude the most important ones. Yes, but again, who cares? So it can happen. I care, but what shall I do? I cannot ask 100, so I pick 40, better than nothing.
And anybody, how have you dealt with that, Jay? Or you haven't quite gotten that far yet?
Yeah, I haven't gotten that far yet. I'm kind of asking the question of just short of a survey, because I know the ideal is you go out and talk to customers and find it. But if I have these statements and for the short term, I'm kind of limited to some kind of internal discussion within, and I'm in a very different industry than you. I'm in healthcare delivery. You know, one of the things I'm thinking is we have several different modes of treatment for a type of patient. We could even just have an internal discussion about where we think the differences are in the desired outcomes compared to others, or maybe a competitor analysis. So I'm kind of thinking of almost the tabletop kind of exercise that is far from ideal, but better than not using desired outcomes at all.
Interesting. Anybody else? How has anybody else dealt with the volume of potential outcome statements that you get? I just did one and I ended up with 37. It wasn't a great project. I mean, I probably could have generated more, but it was a little bit like Wolfram, where I said, hey, these are representing the themes that I'm hearing, and 37 is what I can do right now. It's artificial and brings in bias and potentially skewing the results, but I'm taking that with a grain of salt as I move forward.
I just remember a project, it was already 4 years ago, where we already practiced it already. I put a link in the chat, and we had this long, so I was able to have this long list, like you, maybe 100.
Yeah.
And what I did then, there was no other option. I sat together with a heterogeneous team, with my boss, PO, developer, QA, product manager, whoever, 10 people. And we went, so I read out the statements. It took us 2 times 2 hours, I guess. I read out the statements. Everyone was able to rate it from 1 to 10. We calculated. At the end, we had a list of all these 100 statements calculated internally, I know, but at least we had some at the top and some at the bottom, which helped us to, okay, let's go with the one at the top, because and everyone in that room discussed and thought about each statement at least for 20 seconds.
Interesting. Which is a nice effect to have. Jonathan, did you want to say something? I saw you on mute.
We actually it depends on how critical it is. You know, we'll try to, you know, if it's really important to get it dialed in, we don't cut corners, but we'll have discussions around how important are all of these, and talk about each one of the interviews that we did and try to rank them internally before we go out to a survey. And I mean, we try to get the most important things into the survey, because you know, we make a hypothesis that these are going to be very important, or they wouldn't really have made it into the list.
Right.
And we look to validate there. So we tend to have relatively high importance, because we do see in the surveys people trailing off.
They start to drop off. When did they start dropping off? Like around 50 or something?
Sometimes less, and it depends on
Sometimes
how
less,
complicated the domain is. So if you're looking at something that's more highly technical, and you know, you're kind of at the mercy of getting the right people into the survey. I'm mostly worried about which is worse for the outcome. People phoning in their answers at the end of the survey and just hitting buttons,
or not asking all
or
the
not
statements.
asking all of them.
That's kind of the trade-off. If you don't have a large budget to incentivize them to pay attention to the end, right? Which is the way that you should do it, actually, is just pay people enough so that they're going to pay attention to the end, right?
And then that's what we're doing that right now on a project.
But you are, okay.
We're using an outside recruiter getting this screening right.
Okay, and you're going to put a lot of muscle behind it and get people to sit through all of the outcome statements. Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll still be conscious about how many we put in front of them to make sure that.
I really like that trade-off and the way you formulated. What's worse, getting crap data towards the end of the survey or leaving those off, right?
We also like to look at them, at least. I know it's not right to kind of have your mind in the solution space, but always think about the business goals. Mm-hmm. And whether you're like how much impact you're going to have on solving that problem. Mm-hmm. So putting it through that filter of what's going to be the
strategic filter there.
The strategic filter to it, because we're in consulting too. So we have to be pretty strategic in our approach too, to make sure that they're getting value out of it.
Okay, great topic. This is an issue that's come up time and time again. I don't know if anybody's really solved it other than incentivizing the crap out of people or pre-selecting what's going into the survey. So those are kind of the two things that I've heard going on here.
I'll also say one other thing. I mean, definitely heterogeneous group together, workshop it, and stuff. But the other key thing is rewriting what you have, and figuring out, can things be consolidated?
I've done some of that too, Dom, right? And that's what I brought up by theme, because I have like 3 different outcomes, like reduce the time it takes to, run a test. I'm working with developers right now. Reduce the time it takes, reduce the complexity, reduce the likelihood that I'm going to get bad test results. So you got a group of them that are all around testing. And it's like, can I just take 1 or 2 of those to cover testing as a pain point? You know what I mean? When you step back and look at developing software, which is what I'm working with right now, can I make a pre-selection so that theme is represented and I don't lose it completely, but maybe not have 5 different ways of saying a similar thing, right?
Yeah, because then after you prioritize them, you have a fewer that then you can go do qualitative.
And then I can go back, and I think that's what Wolfram was saying, that if they find heat in that area, then you go back and you can look at all the ones that are around that as well too, both chronologically, but also because they're clustered together, right?
Yeah, we also sometimes got the response when we knew we should not, every detail is important, but we got also responses like, you are asking the same stuff 5 times. And then I said, no, there's a difference in minimize the time it takes, minimize the effort, blah, blah, maximize the livelihood, but they don't know jobs to be done and all that stuff. And they don't care.
It feels like the same question. Yeah.
Stupid. Yeah. So
I actually just had that. In fact, somebody taking the survey said, I think these are the same thing. So, which means to me, they would have answered them exactly the same way, because the perception of the survey taker was that Jim's asking me the same thing 3 different times. Like they literally didn't see a difference between reduce the effort, reduce the time, and reduce the likelihood. Like they were like, this is the same question. So can we pre-compress those into just 1 item to save that bandwidth in the survey? I don't know. I don't know what the bias is going to be there in the end.
This would be my question to you, so I cannot answer.
Me?
I'm no, to all of you.
Everybody, thank you, because I don't know the answer.
Really, the question. I'm always having the question: can I remove that need? Is the other one covering it also? I don't know.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, you don't do it, and it depends. I think Jonathan's point is right. Are you looking at your corporate strategy on where you're going to make the next acquisition? Then no, don't cut it out. But are you trying to inform a team that's, a little bit more operational and they just need insight that's going to triangulate with other insight that you have anyway as well too, right? Hey, Brent, I see you turned your camera on. If you turn your camera on, I call on you.
Yeah, I just want to speak to that.
Yeah, and I was curious the whole time we were talking what your opinion was. So I'm glad you raised your hand, man.
Yeah, it's cool. I love this stuff. So my partner Zach worked at Strategen for 5 years, and so we've iterated their process. And we don't actually use the minimize starter at the front of the needs statements. Okay. So that eliminates that duplication that happens, because often Strategen will end up with 150 needs statements, which just, you can't consume that.
Right.
As we've been talking about, which is, I think you're on the money in terms of how you are thinking about it. Yeah. There is no perfect answer. I think the targeting with the team around the business goals, to me, that's really smart. We just call it targeting. And so there's 2 things: eliminate the minimize part and just craft them as, we usually use things like determine or ensure those types of starters. And then what Wolfram and others have talked about here is something we do as well, which is after you've targeted and you've done the survey, doing the qualitative on those target hotspots.
Interesting.
So I think it is really finding this dance of the combination is what we're talking about here. So those are some of the pieces that we do, and it's the combination that really brings the insight and the clarity.
That's great. And Brent and team, you're doing this all the time, right? You're doing these types of studies all the time. So you have experience actually with the modified method that you just talked about.
Yeah, we have a new project that's just started, and we're actually integrating the switch with the job. Okay. So we'd be happy to share that.
Okay, great. And you were on last week with Steph Trough, huh? So I hope that was helpful for you. All right, last month, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Thanks.
Okay, good. Well, thanks, Brent. Think for that. Hey, I see we got 4 more minutes, Elaine. Do we want to go to one more question, or do you want to wrap up?
I think we have one more quick question from Anna. I haven't put it in the chat, but she was just asking about if your whole target group is just 100 people and you're in a B2B segment, when would you consider that you have enough responses?
So I have the same challenge because we have different products for different target groups. Good question. I also have the question, what I would do if I only have 100 customers, I would like directly talk to them. So if you have the jobs to be done mindset, what's important, care about the most underserved needs of your customers. Find out the most underserved needs in a different way, not with a quantitative survey, because it's just, it doesn't work. Do it in a qualitative way and talk to them. Talk to 10 customers. It's 10% of your whole customer base, which is a lot. And maybe you pick the right ones. And if you are not sure, ask 5 others, and then you have 15 interviews, 15% of your customer base. That's not sure if this is right, but that's how I would do it.
Interesting.
Yeah, we do a lot of interviews as well, but I was just wondering when.
If you wanted the quantitative,
yeah.
Well, my answer is 30. I'm just going to throw an answer out there, 30.
30.
30.
How based on what?
That's just my number. If you want to do anything, that's the smallest number of sample size that you can put up as a pie chart. Like if you're going to have a slide with a pie chart on it and it's less than 30, I'm going to call you out. If it's more than 30, I'll say, okay, you can make a pie chart with that. That's just my number.
And then you would do a quantitative. That's okay. Yeah.
No, that's the quantitative, Sam. Yeah. So she's got a population of 100. She's got to get 30% of those people to respond to her survey, and then she can make pie charts.
Because the same challenge applies to pricing research. If you want to do conjoint analysis with a few values, you get 100 to 1,000 responses that you need. What if your whole group is 100?
Right. Yeah. 30.
Okay. Cool.
But if you else have a number, let's see your numbers in the chat as we go out here, Elaine. I think we're going to have to end it here because we're right at time.